So thank you, Doug. It's a huge honor to be here and tell the story to you, and immense gratitude. And I'm so glad that Rachel and Tiffany and Randall are all here. They were the clients who were brave enough to hire us for this assignment, and I'm eternally grateful to them for that. So wonderful people to work with, and you guys will see some stuff, some of yourself woven into this talk too. So I am here to tell you the story of Livestrong, about the brand, about the seed that it came from and how it germinated, and when it first saw sunlight, and how it's not stopped growing since that moment. And as I was reflecting on this story and going back through it, thinking about it, it became really, really clear to me that it's really, Lance said it best, it's not about the bike. And it's actually not just about Lance. And it's not even about the millions of wristbands. It's actually about scaling Lance's spirit. It's about hope. And it's about creating a community of cancer survivors who want to fight like hell. It's about them. That's really, really what it's about. And it's really incredible to be here 7 years later, nearly to the day. That was one of the fun parts of my archaeological dig to put this talk together, was looking back at when everything actually happened. It really was about 7 years, right about this time of year in August, when Livestrong first started showing up in our work. So that's kind of neat. I'm sure that was all designed by date, time. But it's amazing to be here with all of you and in this incredible building that is, to me, the full expression of what this brand could be and even beyond. And it's really means a lot to me to be here, because being part of creating this brand has shaped me. It's changed me. It's completely changed the positioning of Milkshake. We only focus now on brands that build community. You can't do any other kind of work once you work on something like this. It introduced me to my husband, Don, who's here. But even, I think, more important than that, it continues to this day to provide just so many people, millions and millions of people, with hope. And that is so incredible to me. So as I relived creating this brand, oh, you guys want me to use this mic too, sorry. There's 3 microphones. Sorry. Sorry, now I realize you guys probably couldn't hear a lot of that. As I relived, creating this brand, one thing that became really apparent to me from this vantage point and from this place that we're at now, looking back on it, was that the brand really embodied what we call its brand essence as it came into the world. And its brand essence, which was we had an internal phrase that we used that wasn't really for public consumption, that came from Lance, and it was fight like hell. And that was the touchstone that we used for everything that we did on this. That was our guide. Everything we did, we said, does it embody that spirit of fight like hell? And one of the things that became very clear to me in putting this together was that this brand was true to itself because it fought like hell to show up in the world. And it's a story about changing the assignment and not accepting the assignment and asking for more and letting things make you and the assignment bigger than they are. And that theme just comes out over and over and over again in this story. So let me go ahead to chapter 1, which is receiving the assignment. Randall and Tiffany, you may remember this cover of the RFP that was created. And let me tell you a little bit about the assignment. It was back in February of 2003. That was what the foundation's logo looked like at the time. The foundation was probably about 10 to 12 people. You were headquartered in a little light yellow gingerbread-looking house off of Bee Caves Road. I was trying to find any evidence of it on your website, but it's not there. In this meeting, the assignment was to create what was called the Survivorship Resource Center. So the first, at least 6 months of this thing as it existed, it was the SRC. It was the Survivorship Resource Center. And to give you a little bit more context about it, at that point in time, the foundation had 4 main different focus areas. There was advocacy, there was research, there were programs, and there was education. And the board had already decided that there should be a focus on survivorship, but everybody was sort of trying to figure out exactly what that meant. And the education program decided that they wanted to focus on building out what they were doing by creating this Survivorship Resource Center. So it was an online exercise, and the RFP was mainly asking us to help develop the content strategy and what should be on this part of the website. So part of what I want you to understand is, like, this is the foundation, and here's the 4 focus areas. Here's education, and then for education, here's this web project for the SRC. So in this tiny little corner, important corner of the foundation was where this started. And that was what happened. Randall invited us to, and Randall's title at the time was Director of Online Services. That was interesting to me to find too, because even Randall was mainly focused on web back then. And invited us to respond, and we did respond, and he decided to work with us. And another, just picture to paint in terms of where this started is that this was before Facebook. So think back, if you can, before social media and before Facebook, when websites were pretty static, when it was groundbreaking to have video. I mean, it was just groundbreaking to have video. This is the era that we're in, and so this was the assignment. Okay, so chapter 2. You can go ahead to the next slide. I would call chapter 2 Listening to Cancer Survivors. So the first thing we did when we started to work with you was we took a bunch of the quantitative research that had been done to determine some of the positioning around survivorship, and we said, okay, we have to really, really dig into this. We have to understand what people really need here. So we spent a lot of time doing qualitative research, listening to cancer survivors, meeting with oncology nurses, spending enormous amounts of time with the friends and family that we had, that we knew that were going through this, and really trying to understand deeply what this experience was about. And as we did that, we started to come to some realizations. The first realization we hit on was that these people needed new language. A lot of them weren't motivated or empowered by the word survivor. Some were good with it, but some were not. Some thought, no, this was a bigger fight, and I don't want to just think that I survived. I want better language. I want more than that. The second thing we learned was that they wanted to talk to each other. They wanted to tell us stories. They wanted to know who they were, and they wanted to share stories. We kept thinking when we started this thing, oh, we're going to have to get the most expert medical resources and bring those to these people, and that's what they want. You could offer to connect them to the best oncologists in the world, and they would rather share stories with each other. They had stories to tell. They wanted to be heard. They wanted to know each other. They wanted to talk about how their lives had changed. And so the storytelling and the community and the connections started to come out. And then the third thing that we really learned, that I forgot. Sorry, I'm a little bit nervous. The third thing that we learned was that these folks, whatever we presented to them, we needed to present to them in a new paradigm. They needed a new way to enter this experience. And what I mean by that is when cancer enters someone's life, they're mainly given the paradigm or the framework that comes from the medical community, and that makes sense. They're handed, this is the diagnosis, and this is the treatment, and here's what's going to happen. And so this whole major thing that's coming into their life, they're given sort of one aspect of it. And we started to realize, that's just not really enough, because there's sort of 3 equal guests in this house, because there's the way it's going to change their life physically, there's the way it's going to change their life emotionally, and there's the way it's going to change their life practically. And we started to realize we need to, whatever we do for this resource center, we need to offer it in a way that presents this new paradigm and presents it as, this is an experience you're going to go through. You have to really, as I say, treat all 3 of these guests as equal guests in your home. You have to take care of all those parts, physical, emotional, and practical. So we realized through this work that we needed a new language. These people wanted to tell stories and build community, and we realized they needed this new paradigm. Okay, so chapter 3, let's take a look at the landscape. This is just a glimpse of some of what the landscape looked like at that point in time, and obviously these are just logos. But some of what we saw when we looked at the cancer landscape at the time was first of all, it was a crowded space. There were lots and lots and lots of foundations. There was a foundation for every type of cancer. Everything was out there. Quite frankly, I don't think anybody really wanted us to make anything else because they saw it as a threat, and it was crowded. Most of the resources that were there were what I would call pastels, lots of pinks, lots of purples, some blues, but even visually, it looked kind of soft. Most of the messages were equally soft. It very much felt like a time when it was taboo to address cancer with any sort of bold message. It was a time when everything out there was soft. We also knew that the foundation's positioning, when we looked at what is the LAF, what does the Lance Armstrong Foundation really stand for right now, how is it positioned? At that point in time, it was primarily positioned as, it was cycling fans, it was Lance fans, it was about Lance. Most of the people who were associated with the foundation really followed it because they were huge fans of Lance. There were some that followed it because of cancer, but it wasn't like the foundation really stood on its own without Lance in the cancer space. And so one of the things we really wanted was we said, okay, this is an opportunity for us to really position this foundation as something in and of its own right in the cancer space. So this was the landscape that we were looking at. So let me go to chapter 4, which I would call discovering it's more than a website. And at that point in time, we'd taken the assignment, we talked to a lot of cancer survivors, we were really immersing ourselves in their life, and we had looked at the landscape. And it was at that point in time that I first went back to Randall, and this is when you become really grateful to have an awesome, smart, strategic client. Because we went back and said, okay, I know you asked us to come help you build this website, but really there's something much bigger here. There's just a huge opportunity. There's an opportunity here to build a brand, and it's a brand that could bring these people together, and it's a different kind of resource center than any of us ever thought. It's not really just more educational resources. It's making the people into their own best resource. It's really about that. And so would you be up for changing the assignment and letting us build you a brand? And we'll make you a website too, but could we build you a brand? Can we change the whole assignment? And Randall, in his brave wisdom, said, okay, let's see what that looks like. And so we were incredibly grateful for that. And what that really meant to us, because when I use the word brand, I realized there's a lot of different understandings of that word out there. And to me, what brand really means is, what is the collection of perceptions that's consistently associated with you? And it really is a gut feel. I mean, you can make all the brand messaging platforms, and of course we advocate for all that, and get all that straight, but at the end of the day, it's what they say about you. It's what they say you are, and it's the gut feel they have about what you are. So we thought, okay, what do we want this brand to really be? What is it going to stand for? And the other thing that we knew is that, to me, it was the first exploration in what we call a community approach, brands that build community. And the difference in how these brands are put together is to me, profound. Over here on the left, you've got what we call the traditional approach to branding, where a brand takes more of a top-down approach to how it interacts with its constituents or customers or consumers. And it's a more controlling method. It's sort of what most companies and products do. And it's a method where people control what the brand's about, and they're constantly building that relationship, but it's a constant top-down motion. There are some brands, like Livestrong turned out to be, where the brand can actually serve as a platform to not only, it still has to draw people to it, but it puts itself together differently, because what it ends up doing is becoming a platform for pulling people together. And so what starts happening is those people start interacting with each other. And the things that happen between those people are infinitely more powerful than anything that ever happens between just purely a brand and its constituents. And so the brand becomes entangled in people becoming best friends. The brand becomes entangled in people finding someone who says something to them that changes their life or the whole way they're going to get through something. I mean, the brand becomes entangled in relationship. And that is hugely different. So the brand becomes a platform for them. It becomes supportive to them. It becomes infrastructure to them. And that is really what we set out to do here. So now let's go to the part where I would call it Chapter 5, Finding Your Name and Logo, which will probably be an interesting ride for you. If any of you have ever asked your parents what your name was going to be if you were the other gender, or did they change your name, or what were the other, that's what I'm about to show you. So you can see maybe what you almost were going to be. Okay, so as we started to name storm and look at things, and we knew we were positioning around survivorship, and we thought, okay, what's that mean? We know we need to come up with better language. We know we can't use that word, but we need something that means that. These people have been through this thing, and we need to come up with a good name that means, beyond that. And so we started name storming, and the name that everybody, after many, many rounds, that I'm not going to show you all those, landed on was This Point Forward. And that was what it was going to be. Everybody loved it. This Point Forward. How optimistic, how great, It was This Point Forward. We did all these logo explorations, we focus grouped them, people liked it. It went to the board approved it. It was awesome. We had a new brand, we had a new name. It was This Point Forward. And even the board had approved it. But I wasn't satisfied. There was just something that wasn't right about it yet. And so this is the point, again, at which I think both my client and my team decided I was crazy, because I said, I think we can do better. That's cool that we made all that and it's approved, but would you give us 2 more weeks to see if we can come up with something better? And so Randall, again, was wise and strategic and generous in spirit, like the brand, and said, okay, let's see what you come up with. So, go to the next slide. At that point, I went back, and this was fun for me to go find. This is my copy of It's Not About the Bike, with my Post-its from 2003 that I inflicted upon my team as I preached to them parts of this book that we had to do a better job of coming up with a better name. And I went down to the name wall one morning. We were in a little house on 6th Street then, and took everything down and just put these huge words up there. Fight like hell. And it all came from this page 152 in this book, of Lance talking about when he started the foundation. And one thing that you should know too is, at this point in time, we haven't met Lance, we don't know him. And one of the things I love about this book, and I love about Lance and Sally Jenkins creating this book, is this scales Lance. It made it so I could get to him. I didn't have to, it made it so I could get to in his head and study what was going on in there. And so he's talking about starting the foundation. He's saying, I didn't want the foundation as a pulpit for me personally. I didn't think I was special. And he says, all I really wanted to do was tell people, fight like hell, just like I did. And that, of all these Post-its, which would be fun to review at some point if you want, but that was it. I was like, that's it. That's what this has to be. It has to be that we're going to fight like hell. It has to be that. So can you go to the next one? So this became everything. And everything that we did came from this place. And of course, we couldn't call it that, So, and this is actually the most I've said that phrase, outside milkshake, ever. Because I always think, well, am I offending anyone? But I feel like if I can't say it to you guys, So, but this was it. This was everything. Everything was tested against this touchstone. Everything was, but is it fight like hell? But is it fight like hell? But is it enough of fight like hell? That was everything that we made went back to this. So, go ahead to the next one. We went back and we started coming up with new names. And these were some of the things that started to emerge. Things like, we had Living Forward, and we had Thrive, and we had Defy Cancer. We still had This Point Forward. We had Live Forward, and we had A Strong Life. And again, we went back to the cancer survivors, because to me, it doesn't really matter what we think. It's really what they think and what motivates them. And we were constantly studying what they were motivated by about what you were doing. And as we focus grouped this, we started to circle in on A Strong Life, which became really an interesting phrase. And we decided to focus on 3 that we did another round with: a strong life, living strong, and live strong. And so right about, like I said, it was like in August. It's weird. It's like almost the same date-ish, 7 years ago, was when those words started happening. And then, go ahead to the next one. We started landing on Live Strong. And before I start talking about some of the icon and identity design, I need you guys to try to go back with me and understand what an incredibly tough but good decision it was to go with this name. Because now when I talk about it to people, they're like, yeah, Live Strong, of course, great name, whatever. That was so not the choice that happened. I can vividly remember being in focus groups and holding this up and having cancer survivors look me in the eye and say to me, you cannot tell someone diagnosed with cancer to live strong. That is just wrong. You cannot do that. And I then had people show up and look me in the eye and say, that is exactly what we need to hear. And then I'd have them in groups together fighting about it. No, that is just way off base. That's obnoxious. You know, you can't say that to somebody. You shouldn't even use a verb. You can't tell somebody what to do. You know, and you know, I mean, I'm trying to, like, this really was a hard decision. I mean, it was really hard. And one of the things I've learned in the work that we do is that sometimes when things are that polarizing and people feel that strongly about it, it's right. It's scary as hell to make the decision because you have to go back to your very generous client and say, okay, here's the name recommendation we have. No, it didn't focus group very well. It was not unanimous. There were huge disagreements about it. It's a very, very risky name for you to take on, and we think it's absolutely right. And these are not easy decisions. Oh, and there's this problem that sometimes people say Live Strong and sometimes they say Live Strong. And we can't get the .com domain because this personal trainer has it, but we can get the .org, you know? So, but we think you should go with it. Really, we think you should. And again, Tiffany and Randall were incredible and said, okay, let's explore this. And so we started to explore it. And one of the things there's just hundreds of these things. And one of the things that we had started to land on, and again, I think this is kind of trendy in branding now, but at the time, this word wasn't used as much then, but we started to really see these folks as a tribe. And we really started to look at it that way and say, we want these folks to feel like they are part of this same tribe, and they want to find their people, and they want to brand themselves with this, and they want to identify themselves with this, and that's what we want this symbol to have, that spirit in it. We want it to almost feel tribal and authentic, and we want that to really be, you know, how this feels. So some of the marks we were exploring had that kind of tribal. That was one of our guides. Another thing that we heard a lot, again, going back to the people we're serving, was we observed that a lot of cancer survivors had this language they used where the relationship they have with cancer is that they call it the C, or the big C, when the big C came into my life. And so we started to realize they had this relationship with the letter C. And we wanted to change that for them. So what we started to do was explore these marks where the two C's came together, the way we wanted people to come together to form this S, this strength, you know, to form this chain. And that was a lot of what the mark was that we were exploring and ultimately landed on. And some of you may or may not know this, although Doug's wearing the original shirt, but the colors that we actually landed on and the initial logo that we went to was this orange and gray one down here in the right corner. That was actually what Live Strong looked like when it came out in the world. And part of that had to do with, remember that color space I showed you in the cancer space? We were like, if we're gonna do this is big and this is bold, and we're going bold. And nobody had orange, nobody had orange. We wanted a color that was bold, that was warm, that was bright, that we could own, that nobody was using. And so orange was it. And so we went with this big bright orange. And you know, that's really where we landed. So then let me go to the next chapter, chapter 6, which I think I would call, you can go ahead. I think, oh no, let me show this too. This was actually fun. See, Tiffany? It's an email from you, I promise you, something. This was actually fun. This was an email that Tiffany and Randall sent us, see, on April 23rd. And it was, you know, the first sort of feedback we had from Lance, that apparently he came by and saw some of it and really liked it. that he might come by for a milkshake sometime. So we were excited about that. It was fun to actually go back and find that one because I remember how much that meant to us, and we were like, well, then we're getting it. If he can see it in that, that's awesome because we're scaling him. Okay, go ahead. And the moment that we knew we really had it was when one of the early survivors that we talked to, some of you may know Bob Bloomquist, he has some videos on the site still, I think. He, as soon as he saw it, said, I'm getting that tattooed. And we actually got to go and be there when he got the mark tattooed on himself. But that felt like a major victory to us because we thought, somebody's tattooing it, it's good. It's really good. That's good. So that was actually fun to see the tattoo happen. Okay, keep going. So then I would say we're at the next chapter, which is chapter 6, and I would call that if you build it, they will come. And they did. They really did. And so at that point, we had the name, and we had the identity, and we were starting to understand what the brand was about, the spirit it wanted to have. And so we said, now we need to build out the full expression of this, and what is it going to be? And we knew we still needed to do a website. But what we really started to look at was to say, let's make sure whatever we put out there really does serve as a way to bring these folks together and share stories, and it's about community. And again, remember, there's no Facebook. Well, there might have been early stages, but nobody was using it, not the way they're doing it now. And so it really was about how we were going to scale this resource and put it together so that it was about something different, and it felt really different than what was out there for folks. This was actually part of one of the print pieces, but I just really liked that passage about the fact that these stories are full of wisdom and first-hand information. These stories are incredibly honest. That's really what this is about. That's what people wanted. They wanted that. So let me give you a little bit of a journey down the historical lane of your websites. Go ahead to the next one. So when we started working with you, this is what the Foundation's website looked like. I don't know if any of you have ever seen this, but this was the Foundation's website. And actually, one of the first things we did right as we were about to launch Livestrong, the site, was you guys had us redo your website too. So go ahead to the next slide. So that was actually how it got redone. But you can still see that it's pretty consistent with a lot of the things that were going on in the space. But at the same time, go ahead to the next one. This was actually the first version of Livestrong. And one of the things I also want to point out is that this was a separate website. So there was, the LAF.org and there was Livestrong.org, and they weren't the same thing. Because remember, we're just in a little corner. We were a little test project of education. We were just a little thing, a little light your corner kind of thing going on at the Foundation. And this is what it looked like. But you can remember that landscape, remember what these sites look like, and look at how different the energy is about the photography and the vibe and the language. And even this was it was a pretty big deal. It was pretty bold, and it was big. And you can see that the resource was all organized by the physical, emotional, practical, and it was very much about offering that paradigm to people. Not in an overt way, but in an implicit way that just started people thinking about that, and that those were all the components and we were going to serve them equally. So go ahead to the next slide. So at this point, we launched that Livestrong site in about January-ish of 2005, and it was right around then when Nike came and started talking to the Foundation about the fact that that summer, Lance was going to go for 6, and that was a really big deal. And they don't usually get involved in their athletes' foundations, but that's such a big deal. They wanted to kind of see what the foundation was doing and see if, I don't know, if there was anything they could, do in support of the foundation and work. And so folks from the foundation went and presented to Nike and said, here's what we're all about, and here's the different things we have going on. And we just launched this new thing that we're putting together called Livestrong. And as I understand it, when they saw that, they said, this is great. And they said, we have this, these bands that we've been making that we're trying to get going in basketball and baller bands, and we think it'd be neat to put that on some of these wristbands. And it evolved, and eventually came to the point where they offered to make 5 million of them for us to sell. And again, time travel back to me, with me. Nobody is wearing wristbands. And so when somebody says to you, I'm gonna make you 5 million pieces of plastic for you to sell, for people to wear, you're like, okay, we'll give it a shot, we'll try it. I don't know if anybody's gonna do this or not. I mean, because nobody was wearing them at that point in time, but you thought, it's Nike, this is cool, let's try. And so as they were designing it, one of the things that they wanted to do, because they're tied to cycling, was bring it back to cycling a little bit. So the yellow came in because of the yellow jersey. And we were a little bit resistant to that because we were trying to take it away from cycling some and more about cancer. So there was a little bit of a, are we gonna change it? We've already launched it, it's orange, what are we gonna do? And then it said, no, okay, you know what? Once again, we gotta do the right thing here, we gotta make the tough decision. We're changing it, it's gonna be yellow, because yellow's bold, it's warm, nobody owns it, we can own it, it's big, it's bright, let's do it. So everything became yellow. And so we changed everything. So go ahead to the next one. So it all became yellow. And now everything was yellow. And another thing that we had to do very, very quickly on the website was we had never planned on selling anything on this website. So in a matter of a couple weeks, we had to all of a sudden figure out how to put a store up there and how to find fulfillment and how to start selling these wristbands. And of course, we didn't think we'd be selling them in any sort of volume like what we all knew happened, but we just put together a little store and had to get that up there really quickly. One of the things that happened, that's one of my favorite stories about this kind of theme of learning as you go and letting the brand be as big as it wants, is that is this concept of storytelling. So first let me explain that when we knew that we wanted the cancer survivors to feel a sense of community, and at that point in time, the main way that there was community online was through bulletin board systems. Who's with me? BBS. Anybody remember that? Yeah. The kids won't know what we're talking about. But we looked at a lot of the bulletin board systems that were out there, and what we found in the cancer space was that a lot of the people who spent a lot of time on the bulletin boards were pretty negative, and we're like, well, that's not really the vibe we want to put out there. That's not really the mindset we want to place out there. So we decided instead the best way we could actually create community was through really awesome videos. And we actually worked with Alpheus, who's here filming, to make a bunch of the incredible videos that were shot. And we thought, if these things are so great and people feel like they've met this person and they feel like they know them, and we have more control over making sure they're the kind of vibe that we want to put out there, that's the way we're going to start seeding this spirit, and that's the way we're going to start doing it. So we did not put bulletin board systems on this site. We put lots and lots of videos, and people felt like they knew each other. But then what happened was the store launched, and people started buying wristbands. And in the store module we had very rapidly put on your site, there's a feature on the store where people could rate and review products, and it was just on there because it was part of the store module, What people started doing was they used that to write stories about why they were buying the wristband and who they were wearing it for and why it was important to them. And as soon as a couple people did it, everybody did it. So before we knew it, the whole store, ratings and reviews, was filled with people writing stories and stories and stories and using this thing for what they wanted. So we really quickly realized we have to give these people a way to start telling their stories. We've got to change that. So go ahead to the next slide. This is actually some more iterations. Go one more. It kept growing. That's when we went to building a module. This is just one example of some of the ways we let people tell stories of used to be called Livestrong Live. And it was actually like a make your own video thing. I mean, today this all seems ancient, so roll with me. But it was cool back then. It was really cool. People could make their own videos, they could put their own music in and pictures and video, and that was novel. And it was a way that people could finally start creating their own videos. And that was a really fun way to do it. Okay, go ahead to the next one. So I think 2 more chapters. Chapter 7 is one I want to talk about that I would call Partners Plug In. And because you already know the story about Nike, I feel like that's the one with the wristbands that it was just incredible. I mean, I don't need to tell you that story because it was amazing. I mean, it was to watch these things start flying off the shelves and then they couldn't make them fast enough and Randall, I don't know how many times we broke the store, and you had to change servers, and it was just unbelievable. And I'm really glad Randall and Tiffany solved all those problems. But it just went. I mean, at the peak, I think you guys probably all know this, but the foundation was selling 100,000 wristbands a day. I mean, imagine any nonprofit bringing in that amount of money every day. And it was really the democratization of, fundraising and all the good things that you already know about that. But I thought maybe what I would tell you is a few of the stories about some of the partners that maybe you don't know. And one of the things I think was so important is that when we launched this, there weren't big budgets. There was no budget for advertising. There was nothing traditional about launching this. We knew it was going to be grassroots. We knew we'd do as much online as we could because we could reach as many people, but not everybody as we could that way. And we did things like we made a digital media partners download site where anybody who wanted to start getting banners and buttons and email signatures and anything could start adding that on. And that was a lot of what happened behind the scenes for people to start saying, this is important to me, I want you to go check this out, this is really cool. There were other people, I really can't say enough about how many partners showed up, big and small, because as you know, this is pervasive, it touches everybody. So you can't go to a printer, you can't go to a t-shirt manufacturer, you can't go to anybody who doesn't say, I want to do something here. And they all plugged in ways that made this just scale and take off, that were just incredible because it touches so many people. This is actually a story that I don't know how much you know, but I thought it was so neat. One of the partners who came to the table was Bristol Myers Squibb, and said, what can we do? And one of the things we had always thought of was, where do we want to be with this? If we could be anywhere, we want to be in people's kitchen tables over dinner. We want to be in the oncologist's office at the point of diagnosis. We want to be, we thought of all the places where we wanted to be, where we wanted this brand to show up. And we thought, how can we get there? Who can get us there? And one of the things that was just such a neat win-win-win was we thought, okay, how do we get into all the oncology offices? Well, Bristol Myers Squibb already has a sales force set up to go call on every single oncology office everywhere. And if you know much about that, drug reps aren't really the most popular people when they show up at the doctor's office. They are trying to sell drugs, and the docs are busy, and they don't always want to spend a lot of time with them. So we thought if we can equip them with something cooler and something different and something novel, that actually helps them, be more welcomed. The oncologists don't have time to deal with things much beyond the medical parts of what they're helping people deal with, but they know that there's emotional and practical parts of how this is changing their life. And we didn't have any resources to put together a sales team to get this out there. So what we ended up doing was building these little cubes that had these pamphlets that had books and CDs. It wasn't really DVDs back then. And Bristol Myers Squibb helped pay for producing these, and then their drug reps took them to all the oncology offices. And physicians could give these packets out to people that they felt like they wanted to give them to. And it was just this win-win-win. And it all, happened. And for the foundation, this was something that, was virtually free. it was just an incredible thing that came together to scale it. So there were just lots and lots of stories, like people doing things like this. And I thought maybe I'd tell you some of those stories. So then let me go to what I would call Chapter 8. And when Randall and I have presented this before, we talk about this part and we call it the perfect storm. And I really think it's important for you to have an understanding of the timing of what happened and how it was all perfect. It was actually perfect that we needed more time to get the brand right because we might have launched too early otherwise. But what happened was when we came out with this in 2004, it was the summer that Lance was going to go for 6, and as we know, ended up winning it. And one of the things that happened, the wristbands came out, Rachel and I were just talking about this in about April timeframe. And so by July, the wristbands were big, and they were especially big with Lance and his fans. So Lance goes on in the summer of July to win 6, and you can see, the things are everywhere. This is just one shot. These things had just come out, they were everywhere, and everybody had to have them. And this was huge, and everybody was watching, and everybody saw them. And so, you can't ask for more. It's just awesome. This is just incredible timing. But then, go on to the next one. It gets even better, because what happens is right after the Tour de France, it's the Summer Olympics in Athens. And Nike goes and puts the wristbands on all their athletes. So if everybody didn't see it during the tour, it goes on to the Summer Olympics, and everybody starts seeing it there. And we reach even a bigger audience with that. But then it doesn't stop there, because in 2004 it was also the presidential election. And so lots and lots of people in the election cycle started wearing it. Celebrities started wearing it. More merchandise was being made. I mean, this was just this perfect storm of this thing coming out, winning the tour, going to the Olympics, having presidential, I mean, really visible, big movements and events where lots of people were so on board with what this thing stood for and willing to bring awareness and visibility to it. So it just peaked and launched in a way that, you know, no marketing plan could ever pretend to design for. I mean, and this is one of those things where it's about kind of being really present and paying attention and being willing to change the assignment and seize the day and fight like hell and make sure this thing shows up in as big a way as it wants to. Okay, one more slide. This was actually something that continues to blow me away on a daily basis. I still stop people in the airport when I see them wearing Livestrong, and I have to talk to them and hear their story. And I'm still just blown away when I see people running on the trail. I mean, it still gets me every time. I just think it's so amazing. This was actually a photo shoot we were doing last week in San Antonio for our higher education campaign we're launching called Generation Texas. And the kids, these high school kids, you know, these junior high kids, they all showed up wearing wristbands. I mean, this just blows me away. These kids were like 5, you know, when this happened. I mean, these kids were little. I mean, it's just so awesome to see what it means to people. I was just blown away. These kids just all show up. They've all got wristbands on. They love it. This is 7 years later. This is the difference between, this is not a trend. You know, this is so much bigger than cancer. I know we're focused on cancer, and that is the fight like hell part of the heart and soul of this, but it's so much bigger than that, because it really is about hope, and it's about, again, I have to go to this one part of the book. I'm only going to do this a little. But it's about believing for belief. I think that there's this one part where Lance talks about it here and says, without belief, we would be left with nothing but an overwhelming doom every single day, and it will beat you. I didn't fully see until the cancer how we fight every day against the creeping negatives of the world, how we struggle daily against the slow lapping of cynicism. Dispiritedness and disappointment, these were the real perils of our life, not some sudden illness or cataclysmic millennium doomsday. I knew now why people fear cancer, because it's a slow and inevitable death. It is the very definition of cynicism and loss of spirit. So I believed. And to me, that is so what this is about. I mean, this, what he's talking about, that goes on every day. It's like why I can't always read the news every day, because it's just like, come on, you know, give me some good news. But that's what this is. To me, this means so much more than just cancer, and even than just the wristband. It is hope for people, and that's never going to go away. I mean, we need this more and more every single day. Okay, one more slide. So, in closing, this was actually a proverb I just came across, and it just felt perfect for this talk, and for you, and for everything that's going on here. I just loved it, because to me, that's what this is. You know, Livestrong is this string that's gathering. It's gathering all these scattered beads. They're just out there, but it's collecting. It's pulling them all together, and it is this scattered beads. So when I, you know, stand here today, 7 years later, and I look at all of you, I mean, it's like 10 times the size of the staff, and in this amazing building with this awesome brand that you've built and grown and that you continue to steward, and with, you know, any partners you can dream up and think of that want to work with you. I mean, my challenge to you is, you know, from this platform, like, what are you gonna do with this? Like, from where you are now, you know, how are you gonna change the assignment? How are you gonna go back to your little corner of whatever you're working on, and, you know, have it become, to me, what was a child brand that takes over the parent brand, you know? I mean, how are you gonna let this thing make you bigger than you ever thought you could be? How are you gonna let it change you? How has it already changed you? How are you gonna scale this thing beyond where it's already gone. How are you going to cross boundaries into different parts of the world, that want this, that need the message that it brings, that need to scale hope and spirit this way. And as you do that, I would really encourage you to enjoy the ride, because as challenging and as important as it is, I remember when I worked with my team on this, the thing I would always say to them, and I meant it, and I'd say it to myself too, was, you know what, you guys, every now and then, if you're lucky, like once in your life, you get to work on a project where if you do your very, very, very best work, you might change people's lives and make them better. And that's what this is. I mean, that's what this is all about. You guys get to do that. So this is it. Like, if you do your very, very, very best work, you can change a lot of lives. And as a really small gift for you, you can actually, Heather, if you want to help me pass some of those out, I made you a little insider's guide of the brand essence, a little Fight Like Hell card. You can do whatever you want with it, but I thought it can be your little insider's guide to remembering, what's at the soul of this. Use this, test everything you do against this, change the assignment, pay attention, kind of show up, see if it needs to be bigger, see if you need to change the outcome. Just fight like hell.